Dear students, in this particular session, we are going to have an introduction to the play Macbeth, written by William Shakespeare. Okay, this is something which might give you an idea of how the Bard of Avon, the national poet of England, looked like William Shakespeare. And here you can see his home in Stratford upon Avon. Students, we should know this fact that English people are very conservative and they are somebody who believe in preserving their legacies, their traditions and their heritage. And that is why even today we see queen and king there, isn't it? So in the same way, Shakespeare Home has been preserved, and it would be a treat to just visit that place and to see how Shakespeare lived, what was his house like. It's all restored and in the exact form it is there. So people who are admirers of Shakespeare, they visit this place like a place of pilgrimage. They enjoy visiting this particular home, which is still today in the same way as it was in his days. It is preserved. You get to see even the furniture, everything over there used during Shakespeare's time. And here you see the picture of Globe Theatre. Why it is important is because this is a theatre. Of course, it's not the original one built by Shakespeare, but it is reconstructed in the same form, which is there in London now. So how exactly was the Globe Theatre? How different it was from the modern theatre. Everything can be experienced, and of course, you will have a great treat of Shakespeare's plays being played here even today. So these are all a must visit places if at all you have a chance to, visit London. Okay, so much so for giving you some pictorial ideas. Here, let us now have a more serious discussion about the drama or the play. Students, I thought before actually dwelling into the play itself, it is important for us to understand few things about this genre. See, I'm sure that even in your school days, you might have been introduced to one act plays, or you have read some dramas on your own interest and all. But it becomes essential for us to understand how it as a genre is different from other genres of literature. Okay, see, primarily, what is the difference is drama, it presents the fiction or fact in the form that can be acted before an audience. Okay, please, students, remember that drama is a visual art. It is not something that you read like a novel. It is not something that you'll read like prosaic expressions. It could be your essays, or it could be your short stories, or whatever it is. Unlike the novel, novel, I last semester you all studied a novel, isn't it? And it was described, novel is like a pocket theater, and it can entertain you even when you're in all isolated manner to yourself in your solitary moments. If you want to entertain yourself, a novel can do that. But no, if a drama has to be appreciated and understood to its fullest, and to get the charms of it, it has to be witnessed being performed on a stage. That is why a dramatist never writes a drama to be only read. Of course, having said that, don't expect, we can just perform the play here, on this kind of a platform. Nothing like that. Of course, we are studying this in a book form, unfortunately. But of course, the technology is there. If you can just go to YouTube, you find many versions of, Macbeth being enacted, being played. It is made into movie versions and all. So you can just see them, definitely. Okay. So this is something that is intended to be performed in public and not read in private. So that is why a dramatist writes the drama to be enacted, not to be just read. That is the major difference between your other genres of literature to drama. And another important thing here is, students, when you read a novel, I'm sure that you have understood that a novelist has lot of scope to put forth his ideas. He'll have lot of time. A novelist may choose to finish his novel within 200 to 250 pages, and some of them may run up to 1000 pages also, isn't it? So whereas a dramatist doesn't have that liberty. A dramatist has to be to the point. Whatever he has to say, he has to do it in a limited space. Within certain time, he has to complete what he has to say. Okay, so he doesn't have the scope like a novelist to keep on elaborating. A novelist can introduce many characters even at the end of the novel. Sometimes anything is okay, right? He has that kind of a free space, but dramatist doesn't have that kind of a free space. He has to bring in all the ideas, and all his plots and characters should be handled. He cannot have multiple plots in a drama. Usually drama will have a kind of singular plot. Not that there are more than one plot, but usually it will be effective when it is limited, and even the characters are limited. Unlike a novel, you have introduction around 50 characters. In bulky novels, you cannot do that. In a drama, even your characters should be, you should handle both the plot and the character in a very economic way. Okay, not too many characters, not too many plots brought into the play. Okay, so very, very important is that a dramatist has to say whatever he has to say within that small space. Okay, and now another thing here, this is important. Usually, what will be the structure of a drama? Okay, what does the play consist? It is just this. It has an exposition, it has complication, it has climax, it has denouement. Okay, that is how you have to pronounce it. It is denouement, and a solution or catastrophe. What does it mean? See, students, exposition means the beginning part, where you're going to be exposed to a situation or a circumstance from which the action begins. Okay, so that is exposing to the audience that particular situation or circumstance which leads to further actions. Complication is the rising action. So lot many things happen after you're being exposed to the circumstance. It starts growing, the action starts rising, and then comes climax or the crisis, where the action reaches its peak. Okay, students, we often have this confusion because I'm sure that many of us have this habit or practice of saying the end of any movie, the end of any novel or the story is the climax. It is not so. Climax is not the end part of the things. Climax is when the action reaches its peak. Okay, a crisis, and then comes denouement, the falling action, or a solution or catastrophe, depending on what genre it is. If it is a comedy play or a drama, it comes with a solution, or if it is a tragedy, the character meets with the catastrophe. Catastrophe here means the suffering. Okay, so this is the structure of a play. Okay, please understand, usually denouement means in a play where all the characters are made to meet together at the end, and either there is a solution or a catastrophe. Okay, that is denouement. So this is the structure of a play, and there are various dramatic types like tragedy comedy, farce, melodrama, masque, one act plays, and the dramatic monologue. Okay, students, so much so for the introduction of drama. Please remember, when we speak about the origin of Western dramas, I'm not speaking about the origin of Indian dramas, please. We are speaking about the origin of Western dramas. It always dates back around 5th century BC. In ancient Greece, this art of drama was being performed annually. The Athenians were people who loved this format, and they brought it into practice, and annually they used to host a drama festival which used to run for 4 days, and 3 days they used to perform tragedy plays, and then there would be a comic play, and then there would be a satire. Okay, and these were the 3 forms of dramas that are documented, or the documents that we have received, from the past, it said they had this kind of performances. They knew these three ways of dramas, that is tragedy drama, comic dramas, and then there was also satire being played. So long back in those days only, in the ancient Greece, people used to enact dramas. Of course, the format was very different then. Let us not dwell much into it. Coming to English dramas, when did it originate? It has a very interesting background, children. It is again, when we speak strictly about English plays, when it started, the credit goes to the church. Yes. Drama and religion are somewhere related very closely. Why I say this is because the interesting thing is that English drama found its expression somewhere in the Middle Ages. Okay, it so happened that on Sundays, when people would congregate in the church, all the services of the church would be done in Latin, and most of the commoners, they would not understand Latin. Just like we had the problem with Sanskrit, yes. Many of the things that were performed in Sanskrit, all our pujas and homas and havanas, why it was not appreciated or it could not reach the common people is because the medium was Sanskrit then earlier, isn't it? So that is why a lot of changes took place. In the same way, when people who congregated in the church could not understand the service which was rendered in Latin, gradually what happened is these clergymen, these monks and the priests, the people belonging to the church, they thought that it is very important for us to make the commoners understand the importance of religion. So what they started doing was to, inside the church, they started bringing out the actions, scenes from life of Christ, episodes from Bible, like that. They used to start putting it into action rather than just by sermons or the lectures. They started performing it. Okay, that is where actually the English theatre found its expression. That is why it is called as dramas. English dramas are like handmaid of religion. Okay, okay, that is an interesting thing. And I also probably told you that the word drama is derived from a Greek expression which means action, to do. Okay, the Greek word to do means the action. So that is where the word drama comes from. So I think I have given you a few things that you might consider before entering this form of drama. Okay, so now this is a very important thing. You need to be having a brief idea about who this man was, isn't it? See, William Shakespeare has become a household name in the entire world, students. I'm sure that even in the most remotest parts of our country, people may not know exactly William Shakespeare. They would at least mention some of his works like Romeo and Juliet. They would at least know those names of his dramas, right? Isn't it? He's a famous person, and he's somebody who has created that kind of a niche for himself, that he exerted a great influence throughout all these centuries for the upcoming writers, and everybody would have must and should read William Shakespeare if they really love literature. So here is a brief introduction about this man. He was born in Stratford upon Avon in Warwickshire district on 23rd April 1564 and died on 23rd April 1616. Okay, so this is the most fertile age. It is believed that Elizabethan age was the most fertile age when drama, developed to its zenith. Okay, this man was born on 23rd April, and these are the records found from his baptism ceremony and such things. And he is believed to be, dead on the same day of his birth date. The years vary, of course. Okay, and William Shakespeare was the first son and third child of John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. Please remember, even Mary Arden comes from a very affluent family, and John Shakespeare also, was into leather business, but he grew up in his status. And then the interesting part is, a genius like Shakespeare was not somebody who can be called as a university product. That is very, surprising though. But please remember, his education was very minimum. Education means the formal education. Okay, it was very minimum. He had attended a local grammar school where he was taught little Latin and less Greek. Okay, so not something that he could boast of about his education, and he was certainly not a university product. He's not like that. And then his first appearance in London, we get to see in the records that he had employed himself to holding horses outside the theatre doors. And this happened somewhere around 1592. Okay, students, remember, born on 23rd April 1564, and his presence in London was, by then he was married also and all those things, but he alone went to London around 1592. And what was his job? His job was to hold horses outside the theatre doors. And within a span of few years, that means his genius, his craft, his talent took him to such heights that by 1599, he purchased shares in the Globe. The Globe is the name of the theatre. Okay, he became a owner of the theatre. Isn't it amazing to know this kind of a, it's like a fairy tale story. A poor man standing outside the theatre doors. Suddenly, a couple of years later, he's seen to be the owner of that place. Yeah, it's almost like that. But anyhow, this particular period is very important for Shakespeare. It is believed that this man, though employed himself to be holding horses outside the theatre door, that experience gave him an exposure to the people's idea. He would often listen audience coming out of the theater and their reviews about the theater, why they liked the play or why they didn't like the play, why, what aspects were good in that play and all those things. So this helped, actually this experience also helped tremendously to Shakespeare to catch the pulses of the audience. See, that is why he turned out to be such a great dramatist and famous dramatist even during his period. Okay, there were a lot of critics, there were a lot of people who pulled down his leg and everything, but in spite of that, he was a thorough and a most successful dramatist of his period. He's like, the blockbuster movie maker of today. In the same way, he was a blockbuster dramatist in his days. Okay, and he is called England's national poet and the bard of Avon, and his works, including the collaborations, please remember this, they consist of 39 plays, 154 sonnets, 3 long narrative poems, and a few other verses. Okay, so such a vast contribution he has done, children. And please, this man was no ordinary man, and even today we are indebted to him to such a great extent that many of his expressions are being used even in this modern era. Okay, he wrote somewhere around 16th century, and till date, you must know that around 1,700 new words and phrases were introduced by Shakespeare in English language. What a magnificent contribution. And not only that, he has influenced generation of writers after him. Okay, such was his greatness, such is his greatness rather. Okay, his plays can be conveniently classified into 5 groups: tragedies, comedies, tragic comedies, or romances, histories, and Roman plays. Okay, so this is a very small introduction, because I can go on saying many things. And in fact, Shakespeare was the one, probably during his period or Elizabethan era was the time when there were a lot of changes that were brought in, not only in the contribution of new words and phrases, but even in the grammatical aspects and even in the theatre field. Earlier, it was only called as a play, and only up till Shakespeare's period, then it was called as drama, and drama theatres were then called as playhouses. Okay, drama was known as plays, and playhouses, where the play was performed, that was called as playhouses. Only during Shakespeare's time, plays were called as dramas, and since then it has been called so. And drama theatres, it was called. Earlier it was playhouses. Okay, So anyhow, students, this is a very, very brief introduction about William Shakespeare. Okay. Now, you must be wondering that, madam, how is that Shakespeare is so alive even today? I suppose in the last semester when you studied one of his sonnet, he had so much of confidence about his own art, his own poetic ability, where he says that he can give immortality to his friends, and he had the confidence that as long as people will live, they'll always read his poems, isn't it? That was his confidence. And what is so special about this artistic genius? Okay, there are some aspects, students, the aspect of universality, dramatic faculty, nature versus art, truth and variety of character, the power of insight and imagination, humanity, magic of expression, moral ideals, his influence on thought. These are all the specialities. See, I'm sure that most of you will disagree with many things that your parents would say, isn't it? Or elders at home would say. You'll always feel that, your elders belong to old generation and we are new generation people and we have new thoughts. And that is why there is always the clash of this, thought clash of generations, isn't it? But we somehow try to agree to whatever Shakespeare says. And even today, we enjoy his work. How is this possible? When we have so much of differences and we don't want to listen to our own elders who are at least some 20, 30, 35 years elder to you, you can't listen to them. But here is a man who wrote in 16th century, but still you appreciate him today. There must be some speciality, isn't it? So what is that speciality? To mention, these are all the things which are mentioned here. They are universal in nature. Students, why Shakespeare appeals to us even today, how Shakespeare can entertain us even today, it's because of the universality, that he brings about in his plays, in his writings. What do you mean by exactly universality? See, for example, do you think jealousy is a universal quality? Yes, isn't it? Jealousy is a universal quality. You cannot say that, people in Shakespeare's time only they were jealous and today we are not jealous at all. Or a Chinese woman is not jealous and only Indian women are jealous. Or an African woman is bad and, Indian women are not bad. Is that true? No. If love, there are some raw or the basic emotions of human beings which will be true always. You have those emotions present in the past, in present time, and in future time also. People will love others, people will hate others, people will feel jealous of others. Are you getting the point? So he captures those raw emotions of human beings and those core basic characters of human beings in his place, and which is universal in nature. It is present in the past, present, or in the coming future, and it is true to every human being all around the world. Okay, those qualities he brings about in his plays, and that is why it appeals to us. That is why we don't find it stale. That is why we don't think this is an old fashioned idea. Okay, even today, he inspires us. Not only that, students, when there are truth and variety of characters, you can probably name those characters, and all those type of characters can be found in Shakespeare's play. But please remember that he doesn't speak too much about the lowest strata of the society. And not only that, very subtly he has tried to speak about the wisest of his time. He has spoken on behalf of women. He has stood for the Jews' rights also, people who were deprived, in a very subtle manner. He doesn't make it a prominent issue that in my play I have to speak about, practice of discrimination that is happening in European countries. No such things. He doesn't do that. Okay, but very subtly he mentions it. He is, a pioneer in that way of social change also. And his power of insight and imagination. Students, I must tell you this. When you read his characters, even Macbeth, when you read, they are imprinted in your mind. You will never forget the characters that you study in Shakespeare's work. They are all strong characters, and especially his power of insight. See, psychology as a branch of knowledge had not established itself during Elizabethan age. People didn't know what psychology is. But Shakespeare is probably the first psychologist who could speak about the innermost feelings of human beings. Okay, that is mastermind. He was an extremely sensitive person to get into the minds of the characters and to analyze it so deeply. So all the psychological aspects of the characters are brought out so very well. Okay, that is very amazing about him. And there are a lot of his expressions are amazing. If you have to enjoy Shakespeare, you have to understand his language and his expressions. Only then you can really enjoy the magic of his works and his influence on thoughts. Please remember, for generations he has been influencing our thoughts, our minds, and it is said that students will be hugely benefited, will be made to go into a deeper thought when we read his works, when we meet his characters. And especially students, it is believed that after reading Shakespeare you become more sympathetic and you will have a kinship towards life. Kinship with life, that means you will have that relationship with life. You will appreciate life itself in its holistic way when you read Shakespeare. That is the kind of influence that he exerts on his readers or the viewers. Okay, so that is why he's called as an artistic genius. Be his command over the natural ability of expressing the strongest of emotions in such a smooth way, or whatever it is. These were all found in Shakespeare's works, and that is why he is called as artistic genius. Now, coming to Shakespearean tragedy, there are 4 plays which are considered to be Shakespeare's greatest tragedies: Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. Okay, students, so these are considered to be the 4 greatest tragic plays of Shakespeare. So now let us see, what are the features of tragic plays. Okay, usually it will have one key figure. That means, though Shakespeare introduces several characters in his play, his whole concern in the entire play will be about only one character, that is the hero, and whose fortunes are its real theme. Okay, so whatever happens to hero, whatever happens in his life, that is the main content of his play. Okay, he gives importance. It is about one person that we get to read in his tragic plays. Even the very titles there are evident, isn't it? Hamlet is the name, Othello is a name, Lear is a name, Macbeth is a name. So it is about them, that particular person. Okay, so you'll just have one key figure, one main protagonist, the hero, and the entire plot revolves only about his fortunes or his ups and downs. Okay, and high status of the hero. And this is one thing, okay, he didn't write about the lowest strata of the society much. He never, of course there are people like the clowns, mentioning of them and all. People are mentioned from the other strata, but mostly almost all his characters, and especially the hero, will come from a elevated status. He belongs to aristocratic class. Shakespeare makes his hero only those who were kings, those who were the relatives of kings, or the people who were serving in the highest position in the king's court. His heroes were of that standard, and they never had any traits like the ordinary mortals. They were people with extraordinary abilities. Okay, so the status of the hero would be high, and his abilities also would be very, very high. And the hero's fatal flaw. Okay, students, please bear this thing in mind. This is very, very important for you as you proceed to read Macbeth. This is something that you have to very importantly remember about Shakespearean tragedy. In Shakespeare's tragedy, you meet a hero, one hero, okay, and his story will be the major theme of the play. It is already said. But this hero will be an embodiment of all sorts of perfections. This hero will be, a brave warrior, an honest man, a great man. He'll be good in every aspect, but There will be only one flaw in his character, one shortcoming, one failure in his character will be there. Okay, so all his heroes are, superhumans, kind of superhumans, but they'll have only one shortcoming or one failure in their character or one flaw in their character. And please remember, as we are reading and studying Macbeth, what was that one quality about Macbeth that was not good is his vaulting ambition. He was over ambitious. He was a perfect human being. He was perfect. He was a perfect superhero. But what was the one failure in him? He suffered from over ambition. So that creates the downfall of the hero. That causes his ruin. Okay. So much so for this introductory session. Students, all said, but still there are many things to be said. Okay. So a lot of things need to be discussed when we are getting into a great work like Macbeth, the great tragedy written by Shakespeare. It's no ordinary thing. So there could be many more things that could be included here, but I thought this much of briefing will give you some idea about what a drama is all about. It's a little bit of historical background and a few things about Shakespeare and his life, and the special features of Shakespeare's tragedy. We discussed all in this session. I suppose with this introduction we can definitely proceed to our play part. Thank you all.